This is OCWG meeting, I think 18. And yeah, we're cranking on the spec and writing examples for the spec. And we were just having a discussion about using the spec with an LLM to have it generate examples of OCIF files. So yeah, we'll probably be continuing on that, but Max was about to propose something that we discussed today. So go ahead, man.
Yeah, so last time we discussed, or 2 times ago, we discussed about transclusion, and then it
Mhm.
was about adding it to the spec, and then I realized, wait a second, we have a relation for parent-child relations, and
Mhm.
that's about inheriting stuff. So you can inherit properties, but you can also inherit resources. So I realized we have transclusion already built in, and we thought already about every aspect about it. It works. So instead of adding anything to the spec, I started a new document called the cookbook. And the cookbook explains how to use it because
Awesome.
there is nothing missing from the spec to do transclusion. It was just hidden there already. So that was really nice. So we have a cookbook now, and that
Sweet.
helps to use the spec, and maybe it helps LLMs too.
Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
Yeah. Is
and
it
then I
on
really
Bridge or I'm curious,
it's still in the
03?
0.3 draft
Cool.
branch.
Great. Check that out.
Um, and then I realized, okay, so we just added an oval type, and
Hmm.
we really enjoyed ourselves. Yeah, that's a nice type. And then then by conclusion, if you can have a rectangle node showing
Hmm.
an image, so the image is shown with a rectangle.
Hmm.
Nice. So what if you do an oval node and show an image?
Hmm.
Logically, you probably have the image cropped in an oval shape.
Hmm.
And then I'm like, okay, effectively, we are doing some kind of resource composition here using a
Hmm.
single visual node that by chance has on one layer as its built-in content the oval and as its linked resource the image. And
Hmm.
only because of this circumstance they can be combined. That doesn't feel right. So I think what the oval really might be is a node showing an SVG resource that contains an oval.
Hmm.
Maybe we shouldn't have any other type on the visual node except a rectangle. And everything else is showing a resource. Like text node is a node showing a resource. So why is an oval suddenly not showing a resource? Why is that suddenly built in? And if we cannot argue that, then
Yeah.
that's weird.
No, you're right. I think, okay, so a couple things we talked about that are related to this. We talked about rectangle type, and then we talked about there are sort of primitive shapes, which we
Yeah,
decided was one arbitrarily. And we
yeah.
decided there were complex shapes that we would represent with an SVG path. And that would have a resource of an SVG path that would could
We
be arbitrary, in complexity. Um,
almost we decided to have a path as in SVG, but we decided not to use SVG as it is.
True.
We
We
defined a
decided to
path
have a
object.
path. Yeah, a path
Yeah,
object.
but maybe we should have used SVG, or maybe we should define our own resource types instead. Why not have an oval resource type, which is
Hmm.
simpler than SVG? The oval resource just has width and height and a stroke or something like that. And it
So here,
can be rendered using SVG, but it's conceptually simpler than SVG itself. Maybe.
right,
But why? It should belong to the resource layer somehow and not to the node layer because it's so
right. I think so.
sourcey.
Here's my argument from first principles, hopefully. And this might not be convincing, but if I had to steelman the case for an oval, it would be that there are certain shapes which conceptually are very common in whiteboarding examples and usually have some meaning in the like uh, in the actual whiteboarding app itself. And we want to make it trivial to represent those shapes in a very simple fashion without the indirection of the resource. So that would be kind of defining whatever the platonic shapes are, where, rectangle, circle. Yeah, I we so you know, we could decide whether like triangle and other things make it, which are the favored polygons that we bless. But the yeah, it just, if you open any mini whiteboard apps, you're going to have you know, circle, square, that kind of stuff. And so if we're going to move all that to the resource, it feels like it makes the spec more complicated as opposed to less. Um, like I'd rather be able to easily specify a circle and not have to point at a resource. And then the case that you mentioned of having an oval type that also has an image associated with it, I'm trying to think of a real world case where that happens in a canvas today. You mentioned the one case where, like in Keynote, for example, where you can mask an image with an oval. Um, that's
Well, if
a different thing,
our oval is a visual node,
right?
then the spec as such doesn't forbid to use an oval on the node and an image
Okay.
as the resource. So then we need to
Just,
describe what should happen.
well, I think we're getting to a principle here potentially, which is just because something can be expressed in the spec doesn't mean that it has to have meaning. Like the spec doesn't have to forbid all things that
No,
don't have meaning.
it can explicitly say we don't know what this means. That's fine.
That would be if you combine one of our platonic polygons with a image, I'd say it's up to the reader to interpret what that means.
That's
What were
fine.
you planning to do
I
there?
don't have a big issue with that, but this selection of polygons that are not resources but belong to the node itself, I don't know, it feels weird. It's not doesn't convince me well.
Well, so
Maybe we have
now
more
I feel like
opinions in the call.
we're conflating, and I would love to hear Michael and Orion's thoughts. It feels like we're maybe conflating extensions and resources now at this point. Like an oval doesn't have to have a resource because it has we have a primitive understanding of what an oval is. And the same goes for like rectangles and potentially other polygons that we add.
Yeah,
Just like,
but if we go back to like the metaphor we have, then a
mhm,
canvas is a two-dimensional plane having rectangles showing resources. So every text block we have, it's like a div. A visual node is really like a div for HTML. Every little block is showing something. So if we have a hello world, then there's a little block. It has a position, it has a size, and it's showing the hello world resource. And
mhm.
there's another one that shows an image. And then there's another one that shows an oval. Why is this oval suddenly built in on the top layer and not showing a resource? But the image one and the text one is showing resources. Why is
What
it
is the
breaking there?
resource? What is the resource that the oval is showing?
It could either be a very small SVG file, or it could be a new kind of resource, the oval resource type. We can define our own types to make it simpler to express simple geometric stuff.
I would be okay with the second and not the first. And the reason for that is I feel like if you express it with this SVG, one, you have to have the content of the SVG in order to, like the path of the SVG in order to, and the real reason is I want to represent polygons conceptually so that each of the different implementing canvases can say, like, I'm throwing an oval on the canvas at this location, it's this size, and that can visually be represented very differently in another canvas, but they're still the same oval in the same like location on the canvas. Whereas an SVG feels like it's being more about the visual representation rather than the abstract like notion of an
I
oval.
agree with that sentiment. Yeah, we could define our own JSON type to carry the data for an oval and for polygon, for star, whatever you need,
Mm-hmm.
and just represent it in JSON to carry the minimal data and mint new data types for that. So it
Yeah.
would be, I don't know, OCIF geo plus JSON, and then you can contain.
I think
It depends where
we're at
we
the
put the
point where
type.
Yeah, we're probably at the point where we want to like look at the syntax and compare the
Yeah.
options. But Michael
Yeah.
or Orion, do you guys have any thoughts before we do jump into some syntax?
Yeah, for me the most the most natural sounds like having rect and oval, circle, polygon as part of the nodes,
On the
so you
top
can
level.
extend them, and yeah, top level, and images, text as resources.
Yeah, for
Or
some reason there
actually,
seems like an arbitrary divide to me too, that it's like it's hypermedia. It's no longer like a base node. Assets or resources represent hypermedia in some ways.
I can imagine that it will be if you have the oval as a resource, and could that resource also have an image attached, which is also a resource, or text
Mm.
could get quite
Ah,
complex.
good point. Good point. Yeah, for that you would need already composition, right?
The
So do you
index at
have
least. Yeah.
multiple visual nodes?
Yeah, and the way we currently structured it, I think the composition part is in the more on the top level, the node level, with extensions and resources linked.
I think I'm
You said,
also inclined towards
yeah.
having the basic shapes be top level, even though it is definitely arbitrary, where you kind of, how do you choose your you know, like built-in fancy primitives and so on. I think that has some advantages when it comes to tying different kinds of geometry to different semantics, as opposed to having those as resources.
Yep. Also compactness.
Okay, so these are the visual node shapes you can have. Like
And if
the
you want additional shapes, right, you can write an extension.
yeah, yeah.
And I I think now we're pushing in the direction of making this accessible for more what did we call them? Conceptual canvases versus visual canvases. I think this decision is either going to skew us towards visual canvases, like or giving more functionality to one canvases that are purely conceptual or mostly conceptual.
Well, if this is happening on the visual nodes only, so a purely conceptual canvas will just not use it.
Purely conceptual canvases will still have nodes. What they may not have they won't have as strong of an idea. They'll have nodes and relationships between nodes. They just won't have as strong of an idea of position. Like all the conceptual
Yeah.
canvases that I've used have automatic positioning algorithms. It's not that they don't have position, they do, but they don't. Position isn't something that I, as the user of the canvas, am dragging things around necessarily. I'm allowing an auto like GraphViz, like I can choose from multiple different algorithms to do auto layout my nodes. Yeah.
Okay, agree. Then one minor thing is if we do have, as we just decided, a palette of visual geometric shapes that then in addition can also render a resource, what is the Z ordering of these two? Like, is the oval or the rect always on top of the resource? That seems to make sense, but maybe it should be specified.
Yeah,
Who's
I
on
think,
top?
yeah, or does it represent a frame out of which like whatever is out of frame isn't visible? Yeah, I'm almost inclined to leave this to the implementer and say we recommend X. Well, I mean, we always have to say that we recommend X, but we don't. I'm gonna have to make a recommendation here. Did we have z-index on the asset? The resource? Thought we did.
No.
Can be in the position,
Oh.
but not that position, but not
Oh,
the
So the
index.
visual node has a Z index, and the visual node says I'm showing in rectangle, and I have a border thickness of 5. I can have that. And now I'm also showing a resource, an image. Is the
Mhm.
rectangle on top of the image or below, given sufficient
Mhm.
size?
I think
it
our
Seems to make sense
default should
that
be that it's below. Yeah.
so the rectangle should be on top, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
But yeah, it depends, I think.
I could think of it both ways.
Well, if somebody took the work to say my rectangle has a border, it's visible, it's thickness 5, it's blue, and then it should be behind the image? Really? Why?
Yeah,
If you
is
don't
the
want to
image
have,
you probably want it in front, but I don't, yeah, in this example, but
I would say we could actually include this as a specific example, but what I would say there is you have two visual nodes and specify the z's yourself.
that's one way to solve it, but usually if you have a visual node, you can give it a rect outline, a rect shape. That's
Mhm.
part of the extension. You can also give it a resource, maybe an image. So what's the
Right.
recommended way to Z order them? Because there is no Z order defined in the file. Only the visual node has one Z order, but now it has
Right.
two visual things in this one node.
Yeah, I think we could. So two things occur to me. One, we should probably have resources probably need a Z ordering themselves, or we go by array
No.
ordering. You go by array
Re-
ordering.
Resources are abstract. They're just defined, and then multiple nodes can show the same resource. So it doesn't make sense to have one Z index defined for multiple
Sorry, it would be in
locations.
the resources array on the. Oh, I see what you're saying.
You
Yeah,
only have one resource per node. They are just,
oh, they're singular. That you can't have multiple resources per node.
I think you cannot.
That's right. I'm looking at the example. You're right.
not
It's only one.
not yet,
Okay.
not yet,
Great.
maybe.
In that case, awesome. Then I think we just default to saying the resource is behind, quote unquote, behind the shape. And if you want it to be different, then create two visual nodes and adjust the Z ordering appropriately.
Yeah, yeah.
We just need to
Yeah,
default one way or the other.
I don't know.
Michael, you want it to be in front, huh?
Yeah, with that rectangle example and resource, an image that's a resource, I can imagine that the image will be drawn in the rectangle with the border around it, clipping the image. If you have a round border,
Yeah, but that
That's
only
what I'm
works
saying.
you also want that.
if the
No,
rectangle
that's
is
actually
in
what I'm
front.
recommending. I'm recommending that the image is behind the border, so the border would show on top, like you just said, as by default.
So the resource should be clipped within the shape.
I think so.
Ideally, if the implementation can do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. What
Yeah, we
else
can.
do we have as
And regarding we have currently one resource per node, but shouldn't it be possible to have multiple resources? Because I can imagine that you can have a background image as a resource, but still have a text which will be drawn on top of it.
I think I like the simplicity of you can only have one. And even more so, like I think we should push people to creating new nodes here. And if you have like a super complex, canvas that allows you to specify multiple resources per node, it's like, yeah, well, when you unbundle the OCWG, make sure you create multiples because it's just not a common thing. And
I like both arguments. So let's stick to have only one resource being the resource of the node, but to accommodate for Michael's use case, which doesn't sound too exotic, there could be the background extension that puts a secondary resource in the background of a visual node.
100%.
Yeah,
So
that sounds
Yep, that's a great point.
that's good.
This is exactly why we have the extensions, right?
All right, very good.
I have another question regarding the Z-index. Sorry.
Very
If you
good.
have if you have multiple nodes on the canvas,
Yeah.
we currently don't have a Z-index on the node. So how can you
We
change the
don't?
order? Should it be
We
array
don't have
position?
Z-index on the node, on the visual node?
Z
I
index
don't
is on.
think we
Yeah,
do.
it
We
is.
We
have?
should have.
Yeah.
I hope so.
Well,
Am
it's
I wrong?
it's optional, Michael. You can
Oh.
specify the coordinate without it, just XY, or you can specify YZ.
That's the Z position, but is that
We
what we want to use for
decided
that?
that Z position is Z index. I think it's actually in the spec. The Z axis, yeah, the Z axis is basically Z ordering. I guess we
Because
didn't explicitly say Z
I also
order.
have to think about the TL draw, how it's solved there, as far as I know. There's the a special Z index field, which is coded in a special way. Somewhere in our discussions, I put a link to describing
there's
the algorithm they use,
fragment indexing, I believe was what it was called. Let me see.
and that's
Or
in
fractional
that
index.
way only that number needs to be changed. You don't need to put the node in a different location of the array. You just have to change that number.
But that's how we, I think, spec it as well. You have an optional Z coordinate and
Mm.
you can put a real number in there, and the sorting by these real numbers defines the Z ordering. So there's no array resorting necessary.
Yeah, we could solve it like that. It's a simple way.
I think that's how we solved
yeah.
it already. That
Yeah.
we have no array ordering anywhere. I mean, no semantic order.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I have two questions left. One is we once decided we could have a relation type called layer,
Mm-hmm.
but we already have set and group. How would layer be any different?
So let's go to the examples where it's used in canvases. So in a TL draw canvas, you can have like multiple canvases within a single project. In Figma, FigJam, that kind of stuff, you can actually have this idea of layers. Same like on the Remarkable tablet, you can have layers. It basically means that everything that is underneath that layer, basically you can change the Z index. You can think of it as everything that's in that layer. I'm not saying, maybe we can solve all this with group. I'm just thinking out loud about the way that I've seen layers used. Everything that is in that layer can be moved as a group in front of or behind the other layers. It's like it's very different than grouping a set of objects together and attaching them in a group. Yeah, it really is about Z index mostly.
All right. That is different semantics. That's fine. That makes sense. We can add it. I like it.
Mm-hmm.
Good. So my last question is, we have a parent-child relation.
Yeah.
Which turned out to be nice for transclusion. Transclusion, we already had the idea to say that is a node extension. So our idea was to say we have one node and that says I'm using an extension to specify I'm actually inheriting stuff from this other node.
Mm-hmm.
So a node extension says I'm inheriting from this other node. But it turned out we already had a relation extension saying these two nodes over there, they are actually related. This one is inheriting from that one.
Mm-hmm.
So now the question is, what's the better modeling? Is it a relation extension or a node extension? And the nice thing about a node extension would be if I have a node that's just showing stuff from another node, and I'm deleting this node,
Mm-hmm.
then it's very good to also delete the relation that I'm inheriting from that other node, because that's stored together in one blob already.
Mm-hmm.
So adding it as a relation apart from the two nodes adds more bureaucracy to the implementor. So maybe we should change the parent-child relation into a node extension.
Hmm.
But we should maybe discuss a bit about the implication.
Mm-hmm.
It's just an observation I made when I.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. So to recap what you were just saying, a parent-child node extension would allow us to have a separate visual node that inherits some properties from, have a child visual node that has this parent-child extension on it that inherits some properties from a parent node, and it's sort of compactly represented because it's a node extension. Are there
Exactly.
yeah, and if we used a relation extension there, how is it different exactly?
It's just different style. It's really expressing the same semantics.
Yeah. Hmm. In either case, they're both extensions that are not in core, whether it's a relation extension or a node extension. And it's going to be
Yeah.
up to the implementing canvas to model the inheritance relationship between the two, right?
Yeah.
And say, and like copy those properties over and keep them in sync and all that kind of stuff that you have to do when you're doing transclusion in the real world. I'm not sure that I have an opinion. I abstain.
I'm trying to seeing it in my head, but so the
So you have two nodes, one inheriting from the other one.
Mm-hmm.
And you can either put the inheritance information in that node as a node extension and say, by the way, I'm inheriting from that other one. Or you can put the inheritance information outside in a relation and say, by the way, that guy is inheriting from this guy. That's the only difference. This original node is untouched in both cases, all the same.
yeah.
But do we then need one inheriting node with a node extension, or one inheriting node and a relation stating that?
Mm-hmm.
So one thing to note is that the parent-child relation doesn't always inherit properties. So the parent-child relation could be just used for representing parent-child relationships, and the properties remain. There's no transclusion here happening at all. Whereas if we were to make it a node extension, yeah, I think my very slight leaning is that it stays a relation because it feels like an abstract representation, even though you're making the point, Michael, that, I mean, not Michael, Max, that the visual properties getting copied over between nodes is very much going to be a visual thing. Going to modify the visual appearance.
Yeah, when implementing it, the node will probably have to look at the relation to see if it is in a parent-child relation and
Yeah.
copy properties, something like that.
Yep.
But it's still a relation, parent-child.
Yeah.
So
It feels like a relation still.
Yeah.
It feels like more than a node
Okay.
extension,
Okay.
but only very slight preference there.
Yeah, because for ports, we decided to put it in the node. Say this node is stating these other nodes are my ports.
Yeah.
That belongs to the node. Okay. Yeah.
Because we decided that ports are usually conceptual.
Really part of
Yeah.
the
Not
mother node.
conceptual.
Okay.
They're usually visual. They're usually visual of like attach this thing
Yeah.
here. occasionally and especially in Michael's use case and other canvases, ports have additional meaning that is more conceptual than it is visual. And in that case, you probably need a real extension that kind of talks about what that thing is. Ports isn't really sufficient at that point to capture the full meaning of what ports do in CodeFlow Canvas, for example.
Yeah, currently the nodes in CodeFlow Canvas implement the ports themselves. You can define which ports you have, but that's in the node implementation. I want it to be more freely, but so you could that currently if I define ports in an OCF file, those are not used in CodeFlow Canvas. I just have to ignore it because it's in the system itself currently. But that's a limitation of my system, I think.
Okay, I'm done with my question part.
Michael, would you like to give a demo of what you've been working on? I know you dropped a picture in Discord, but it might be nice to have a demo on the recording too for those following along at home.
That'd be great.
Yeah, just one moment. I have my tool open, but just switching to the directory so that I don't have to show some subdirectories of mine. That's one moment. I have too much directories. Go back. It's easier on Mac actually than on Windows.
Max, thanks for your work and like accumulating questions and bringing them to the meeting. It definitely drives the discussion very productively. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Let me know when you would like a PR review of 03.
I think we're done. Yeah, you can take a look.
Okay, cool. All right, Michael.
Yes.
You are sharing. We can see your screen.
I have this very simple OCF file. It's still 0.2. It's not 0.3 yet, but it has a couple of nodes. I don't have an implementation for a circle node, but for rect node, I implemented something special specifically for OCF. So I've imported that file here just by importing it. Where is it? This one.
Nice.
And then you see here the details.
Yoo-hoo!
And
right.
What happens is that I extended immediately with information from CodeFlow Canvas currently. To give it some more, some information for CodeFlow Canvas specifically.
So you kind of make each node a CodeFlow node, right?
Yeah, if I can.
Yeah.
Because
that makes sense.
I have,
like you were just saying, your nodes have like additional meaning to them. Every node does. Like it has like these ports that are available to it and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, you have to be able to program with them. But this rect node in CodeFlow Canvas doesn't do anything. It just passes in the data that it receives, passes through to another node. So I should be able to connect two nodes, and then you see when I execute it, you see nothing.
Cool.
A little bit slow, but you see a white rectangle. That's because nothing is.
Great.
I should be able. I haven't tried this out yet, but let's see if it works. I think it works.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Put the number here, then it just passed through.
That's awesome. So you had the import direction. I saw you also had an import grid.
Yeah.
Do you want to try to import that one?
I created this OCF file with ChatGPT, by the way.
Nice.
Nice. It works.
I had to do some extra prompting to get it right, but it works.
What was the extra prompting, if you remember? Like, what did it get wrong to begin with?
I think it didn't put everything on the right level. I think these stroke properties, I
Oh,
think
they
it
were
put
in
it
the
on the
wrong place in the JSON.
yeah, yeah, I
Okay.
think it put it on the root of the node.
Oh, interesting. That makes
But
sense.
yeah,
It wanted to put like stroke color and stroke width and that kind of thing at the root.
yeah.
That's a reasonable. We started there, and then we ended up pushing it down into the properties.
And I'm not sure if I put the spec into the chat or just some examples. I don't remember what I did exactly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think a really fun tool would be, building a website where you could upload a picture of a whiteboard, like a picture that you took of a whiteboard, and then export to any of the tools that OCIF exports to, as we add them in, right? And so the very first one could be like a TL Draw or Scala Draw or whatever, or Obsidian Canvas. And so the process would be, yeah, having an LLM visually look at the image and then generate an OCIF file from it, and then run the OCIF to just run the tool that does the OCIF to TL Draw export. That could be a fun little demo website, and that would allow people to play with it.
Yeah. I already had an export to TL Draw, very basic, but so I can already export
Ooh.
OCF files to TL Draw a little bit.
This is an awkward round trip. You
Awesome.
have to go to codeflowcanvas.io, import your OCIF file, and then you can export to TL Draw.
Yeah. It's not perfect, but
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know if I can. Let's see. Yeah. It's Dutch. Where did I put it? In the downloads, I think.
Yeah, downloads.
That's not today.
No.
No.
Order it by time.
Yeah, I think I did, but
Yep. It's not in there.
Ah,
Oh,
yeah, I
the
think
rename didn't work. Yeah.
one.
Oh, wow. Nice.
Wow.
Did you see it? It created ports.
Uh-huh.
It,
It works.
That's zoom in on that.
so
That's
that
particular node, the node with the ports.
so,
Oh, clever. So you created separate nodes
yeah, connected those.
and then connected the arrows to those nodes.
Yeah, I currently don't have as beautiful arrows as the Eldro has. I'm working on that, but
No
it's
one
quite,
does.
I'm using currently cursor to build, but that's also very different. It's hard.
But they have a very good blog post on these arrows. Maybe even a separate library by now.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, but perfect arrows is not as good as TL Draw is itself.
Mm-hmm.
Gotta
But
keep some
yeah,
of the
it's
secret.
and yeah, you can also export this to OCIF, of course. Yeah, but you
Holy
see
smokes,
there's
yeah.
a lot more information.
Wow, that's a massive OCIF file.
Yeah,
Very cool.
it's actually this is OpenAI chat completion,
Program.
but with function calling, streaming. It's
Very
quite
cool.
complex, but that's it's a whole different story. Just wanted to try that out.
That's awesome.
It works. It's awesome.
Yes, thanks. It's and I try to get further every week. I also was just trying to using cursor to, I put the spec into here. Just asked it to create a sample OK file.
Mm-hmm.
But it does work a little bit. Where did I put it? Somewhere here, there. Yeah, there it is. But it doesn't do much, fortunately.
Not bad though.
But I
That's
think
it.
there are nodes here that I don't, that Code Canvas doesn't know yet.
Yeah, we need some more examples, but what domain could they come from, or what?
Oh, it has example / circle. That's funny. I think that's still sitting in our spec somewhere, Max, that we did like an example. Do a Command F, I think it's still there. Oh, he probably pulled the 02 spec. Is this the 02 spec or is this from the 03 branch?
No, 0.03, but I changed this manually because I just imported the file that cursor created, but I couldn't import it because I'm checking on this
Version. Good
this
for
to be
you.
here, so I can recognize if it's okay for yes or no.
That is the right
Good.
way. Well done.
But I think it's a very nice format. It's yeah, just keep iterating on it, and I hope
Anything
that
else come up?
that the
I think you've
Algebra.
already I think you already let Max know about a few of the things that you saw in like the spec, but anything else come up that was just kind of painful to work with?
Mm, yeah, I'm trying to remember. Yeah, but I'm now currently I don't use OCF as a store as a storage format, but I do store the OCF file now also in storage, which is index DB in this case.
Mhm.
So I can when I refresh, it still keeps keeps all original things that Code Canvas doesn't support, like this.
Mhm.
What I try to do is for nodes that have Code for Canvas information on it, find information from the original OK file and export that again with this node. But Code for Canvas is in the lead in that case. But
Mhm.
that was not really hard. But that are things you still have to do, also for resources.
Mhm.
Something that let's see, I can show it here, I think. This should have been changed.
Yep. Oh, no.
No, it
Line
didn't.
105.
That's still a bug, I think. It should do that. Maybe it did now. I think it worked. No, it doesn't. When I have two nodes that have the same resource, then I probably need to create another resource. That's currently not something I don't do. But I think there are quite some small things that implementers have to take care, and maybe we need to write some instructions on how to do it or some rules.
Yeah. I in the cookbook I have a section for users and for developers, so that's exactly
Mhm.
we should try to help developers. So what
Yeah.
did you stumble about?
Yeah.
This reconciliation of the OCF world and your own world? Or
Yeah, I find that actually less hard than I expected.
okay.
That's
That's
yeah,
high praise.
it's a synchronization process that you do. So I think you have to decide whether you keep the OCF file as the main storage
Yeah.
or your own format, and then find a way to deal with that. Probably storing the OCF file, using the OCF format as storage format is maybe the best way. but I'm not 100% sure because I don't know all other Canvas implementations. Really depends probably. For me, this was the quickest way currently to do it this way. And it
Then you
was
said multiple resources, two nodes showing the same resource was a practical problem because you needed to, I don't know, handle
Yeah.
it somehow.
Yeah, I don't have now an example, but let's see if I can. Use this quick. Probably have to make some notes when I'm making these kind of when I'm doing this. This is now the same resource as this one, but yeah, yeah, probably you want when I change this, you probably also want to change this one. Maybe.
Yeah, I think we discussed in one call that this is the intention of one resource showing in multiple places. It's really the same resource.
So that's something I don't have yet, but that's yeah.
Mm.
I can imagine that's a bit
But
harder to implement.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if I know the name of the resource, would simply be yeah, you could look to the rest of the nodes if there's another node holding that resource and then update that node as well. Doesn't sound that hard. Yeah, I think the hardest thing is to find other Canvas creators to also start playing with OCF.
Yep. Yeah, I think the question is what's the bait to get some of them using it, and like what's the kind of splat. I think I mentioned this before, but I do think Obsidian Canvas is one of the ones that we should work on first for two reasons. One, that it's very simple, and the second reason is that it doesn't have a lot of features. And so I think people who want to do more with their canvases are taking their canvases out of Obsidian into other tools. And so that would be a way to enable people to get it out of Obsidian and into other things. Yeah, I
So
think
we
we'll need
need
to
to
kind of lead the way by writing a couple of the converters in order to get other people playing with it, Michael. That's my guess.
yeah. Well, we can use Cursor to help us.
Absolutely. Yeah, like I was saying before at the beginning of this meeting, I think we can
Yeah.
get a lot done in a very few hours here. So. Well, guys, I do have another meeting right at the top of the hour. So I think I'm going to call it here unless there's anything else.
Yeah, just take a look at the O3 draft, and if things look good, we can turn it into a next version. Then I'll just remove the draft things and publish it.
Great. Will do.
Yeah, I think we can do that pretty fast, pretty quickly.
Indeed. Yeah, I'll try to get to that in the next 48 hours, 24 to 48 hours. That way we can get it out. Because if I don't, then it'll disappear out of my brain until the next time we meet. So,
All right.
all right, guys.
All right.